Welcome to our new episode.
Imagine this. High up on a dusty hill in southeastern Turkey, a farmer's plow hits something hard. He thinks it's just another rock, like thousands scattered across his barren land. But when he digs a little deeper, he uncovers the top of a massive limestone pillar, smooth, carved, and ancient beyond imagination. What he doesn't know is that his accidental discovery will soon challenge everything humanity thought it knew about civilization, religion, and the dawn of history. That hill was called Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill, and beneath it slept the secrets of the world's first known temple, built more than 11,000 years ago, 7,000 years before Stonehenge, and 6,000 years before the Egyptian pyramids. This wasn't supposed to exist. According to all established timelines, humans of that era were still nomadic hunter-gatherers, people who roamed the earth, surviving on what they could hunt or forage. They didn't have cities, writing, or agriculture. They weren't supposed to have religion or architecture. Yet, what was unearthed at Göbekli Tepe proved that somewhere in the mists of time, humans had built a sanctuary of stone, with towering T-shaped pillars arranged in circles, each carved with animals, symbols, and human forms. It was a discovery that forced scientists to ask, what if civilization didn't begin with farming, but with faith? In 1994, Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist from the German Archaeological Institute, was exploring the region near Urfa, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth. Locals had long known of this hill of stones, but no one had taken it seriously. Schmidt, however, had spent years studying prehistoric sites and immediately noticed something extraordinary. The stones were not natural. What he saw were massive, human-shaped monoliths buried deliberately under layers of earth. Each pillar stood up to 20 feet tall and weighed up to 20 tons. They formed circular enclosures, some with intricate relief carvings of animals, foxes, snakes, scorpions, boars, vultures, and lions. These weren't just random decorations. They told stories, spiritual, symbolic, perhaps even mythic. But what was most astonishing was that the entire site predated agriculture, pottery, and metal tools. This meant people had come together, organized labor, quarried stone, transported it miles, and built a sacred complex, all without permanent homes or farms. To archaeologists, it was like finding a spaceship buried in a medieval village. Nothing made sense anymore. For centuries, scholars had believed that religion evolved after humans settled into agricultural societies. The theory went like this: once people began farming, they had food surpluses, which allowed them to build communities, then cities, and only then did organized religion appear. But Göbekli Tepe flipped that logic upside down. Here, people had built an enormous religious monument before they had farms. It suggested that spiritual belief, not survival or economy, might have been the driving force behind civilization itself. Klaus Schmidt once said, "First came the temple, then the city." That single sentence changed history. Imagine groups of hunter-gatherers traveling from across the region, men and women who hunted gazelle, gathered nuts and berries, and carried spears and obsidian blades, meeting at Göbekli Tepe once or twice a year. They came not for trade or war, but for worship. They feasted, celebrated, and perhaps offered sacrifices beneath the carved pillars of stone beasts. It may have been humanity's first organized religion, a place where myth and ritual began to shape human identity. Each of the massive T-shaped pillars at Göbekli Tepe is a work of art and mystery. The T-shape is thought to represent a human figure. The top bar is the arms or shoulders, the vertical body is the torso. Some even have hands carved into their sides, clasping the front as if they were guardians or ancestors turned to stone. The carvings on these pillars are among the oldest examples of symbolic art ever discovered.
Animals like foxes and vultures dominate the scenes. Archaeologists believe these may represent totemic or spiritual symbols, creatures that held meaning in early cosmology. The vultures, for example, appear frequently and may reflect an ancient death ritual. Some scholars connected to the Neolithic belief in sky burial, where bodies were left exposed for birds to consume, the soul freed through the heavens. But others suggest a deeper layer. These carvings may be part of a storytelling system, possibly the earliest form of proto-writing, thousands of years before cuneiform in Mesopotamia. Every carving, every pillar, every stone circle seemed to whisper a message across time. We were here. We believed in something greater. Building Göbekli Tepe wasn't just about faith. It was an engineering feat unmatched in its age. Without metal tools or wheels, ancient builders had to carve the limestone pillars using only stone hammers and flint blades. They then transported these colossal monoliths from nearby quarries, some weighing as much as an elephant, by sheer human strength and ingenuity. Archaeologists estimate to construct just one of the main enclosures, hundreds of workers would have been required, along with careful planning, communication, and leadership. It's proof that long before kings, writing, or even villages, humans were capable of incredible organization. Göbekli Tepe's builders also intentionally buried the site around 8000 BCE. Why? That remains a mystery. Some think it was to protect it, others that it symbolized the end of a sacred era. But this act of burial was the reason the site survived for millennia, untouched, preserved beneath layers of earth, waiting to be rediscovered. Even today, no one fully understands why Göbekli Tepe was built. Was it a temple to the stars, a sanctuary for the dead, a meeting ground for tribes? Some researchers believe it was aligned with the constellations, particularly the star Sirius, suggesting a form of prehistoric astronomy. Others think it was a place of initiation or transformation where humans first sought to understand their place in the cosmos. The sheer ambition of Göbekli Tepe suggests a leap in human consciousness, a moment when mankind first realized that life had meaning beyond survival. As Klaus Schmidt described it, it's the first cathedral on earth, built not of faith in gods, but faith in humanity itself.
When archaeologists first brushed away the dust from Göbekli Tepe's pillars, they didn't just uncover stones, they uncovered a paradox. Everything about this site defied logic. These were supposed to be primitive people, hunter-gatherers who wandered the wilds with spears and baskets. Yet here they were, raising 20-ton monoliths, carving them with elegant artistry, arranging them in geometrically precise circles. It was as if someone had fast-forwarded human development by thousands of years, as if an entire chapter of our story had been missing. Who were the people who built Göbekli Tepe? No one knows their name, their language, or where they came from. Archaeologists simply call them the pre-pottery Neolithic people. They lived at the threshold between the Paleolithic and the dawn of civilization, around 9600 BCE, right after the last ice age ended. The world was transforming. Glaciers retreated, forests grew, and humans began experimenting with new ways of life. These people didn't yet farm, at least not in the way we understand agriculture. But they gathered wild grains like einkorn wheat, which happened to grow abundantly near Göbekli Tepe. Over time, that very gathering may have led to farming itself. Many scientists now believe that the need to feed workers at the temple, to sustain large gatherings of people for rituals and construction, forced humans to cultivate crops for the first time. If that's true, then Göbekli Tepe didn't just precede civilization, it created it. As one researcher put it, Göbekli Tepe wasn't built because of farming. Farming began because of Göbekli Tepe. The main structures at Göbekli Tepe are stone circles,
each made up of a dozen or more T-shaped pillars, surrounding two central pillars that are taller and more detailed than the rest. These two inner monoliths may represent deities, ancestors, or spiritual beings, the focus of the rituals performed there. Some enclosures show evidence of altars and offering pits, suggesting that animal sacrifices took place. Excavations have uncovered massive amounts of bones, mostly from gazelles, boars, and birds, which may have been part of feasts or ceremonies. Yet, there are no signs of ordinary living. No houses, no hearths, no tools for daily life. This wasn't a settlement. It was purely a place of worship. And that makes Göbekli Tepe unique. Almost every other ancient site mixes the sacred and the domestic. But here, humans came only to build, to pray, to celebrate, and then they left. Walk among the excavated enclosures today, and you'll see carvings that look eerily alive. Foxes running, snakes coiling, scorpions poised to sting. Lions stand beside cranes, vultures spread their wings over human forms. These aren't random decorations. Archaeologists suspect the animals carried mythological significance, perhaps representing forces of nature, spiritual guardians, or constellations. A particularly striking carving shows a headless man with an erect phallus beside a vulture and a scorpion, possibly depicting death and rebirth. Then there's the famous vulture stone, Pillar 43, which many believe is the world's oldest known piece of symbolic art. Some scientists claim it's an ancient sky map, showing constellations and the position of the stars as they appeared around 10,950 BCE, astonishingly close to the date of the Younger Dryas impact, a mysterious global event linked to sudden climate change and mass extinctions. If that's true, then Göbekli Tepe might preserve not just spiritual myths, but cosmic memory, a record of cataclysmic events witnessed by early humans. The idea that Göbekli Tepe was an astronomical site has gained serious attention. Researchers have noticed that the central pillars of several enclosures align with the rising of the star Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, around 9300 BCE. In many ancient cultures, Sirius was a symbol of rebirth and renewal, connected with the cycles of life and death. If the builders tracked Sirius or other celestial events, Göbekli Tepe could have functioned as the world's first observatory, where early humans measured time, seasons, and the heavens. It's a staggering thought. Before cities, before the wheel, before written words, people were already watching the stars, carving their myths into stone, and searching for meaning in the sky. To understand Göbekli Tepe, we must imagine its builders not as primitive cavemen, but as visionary humans living at a turning point in history. They likely came together seasonally, forming vast gatherings from different tribes. Archaeologists have found evidence of feasts, thousands of animal bones, tools, and stone vessels for brewing. Some even believe beer may have been invented here, used in ritual celebrations to unite people in shared faith and purpose. This cooperation across tribes would have required communication, leadership, and shared belief, the building blocks of complex society. It suggests that religion wasn't born out of civilization. Civilization was born out of religion. Göbekli Tepe may have been where humanity first learned that cooperation, imagination, and shared purpose could achieve the impossible. Around 8000 BCE, after centuries of use, Göbekli Tepe was mysteriously buried by its own builders. This was not erosion or natural collapse. It was deliberate. Tons of earth and debris were packed around the pillars, sealing them completely. Why would people bury a temple they had devoted centuries to constructing? Some believe they did it out of reverence, to preserve the sacred site when it was no longer in use. Others think it marked a spiritual transition, the end of one era and the beginning of another. perhaps when farming spread and humanity's relationship with the divine changed. The act of burial, ironically, became Göbekli Tepe's greatest preservation. It protected the site from wind, rain, and looting for over 10,000 years, until a modern farmer's plow woke it from its sleep. When Göbekli Tepe's age was confirmed through carbon dating, the academic world was stunned. It forced scientists to rewrite human history, or at least to question its deepest assumptions. For decades, the story of civilization had followed a neat line: farming, 2, settlements, 3, religion, 4, monumental architecture. But Göbekli Tepe proved that wasn't the sequence at all. Humans were capable of profound faith and creativity long before agriculture. This revelation has ripple effects that touch every field: anthropology, history, even psychology. It suggests that spirituality and imagination are not byproducts of civilization, but its foundation. Göbekli Tepe is not just about stone pillars and ancient rituals. It's about what it means to be human. Those prehistoric builders, with no written language or metal tools, carried within them the same curiosity and creativity that drive us today. They looked at the stars and wondered about life, death, and meaning. They created art, architecture, and community out of nothing but vision. Perhaps that's why Göbekli Tepe resonates so deeply with modern visitors. Standing among those ancient stones, you can feel a connection, as if the echoes of humanity's first prayers still linger in the wind. Klaus Schmidt once described the site as a place that marked the birth of the human mind. It was here, he believed, that thought evolved into belief, and belief into civilization.
By the time the 20th century was drawing to a close, few could have imagined that humanity's oldest monument lay sleeping beneath a quiet hill in southeastern Turkey. For millennia, Göbekli Tepe had remained invisible, its story erased, its stones entombed by the very people who built it. And then came that ordinary afternoon in 1994, when archaeologist Klaus Schmidt climbed the sunburned slope near Şanlıurfa and brushed away the dust of ages. The world would never look at history the same way again. When Schmidt and his team began to excavate, they had no idea how deep the rabbit hole would go. What they uncovered over the next decade wasn't just a temple. It was an entire spiritual complex buried across multiple layers, each older than the last. The deeper they dug, the older the structures became. Some levels dated to 9500 BCE, while others might go back even further. And beneath it all, still untouched, are more than 90% of the site yet to be unearthed. Satellite imaging shows dozens of circular enclosures still buried under the hill, waiting silently like chapters of a forgotten book. As Schmidt himself said before his death in 2014, "We have opened only the first page of Göbekli Tepe's story." It's humbling to think that even now, modern science has only scratched the surface of what this site might reveal about our ancestors. Before Göbekli Tepe, historians believed that religion was a product of settled life, that humans developed spiritual systems once they built villages and farms. But now that timeline was broken. Here was evidence that humans built sacred monuments before they built cities, that they sought meaning before material comfort, that spirituality, art, and imagination came before structure, government, and agriculture. This realization didn't just shift archaeology, it changed our understanding of what makes us human. Anthropologist Ian Hodder called Göbekli Tepe the most important archaeological discovery of our time. Others went further, calling it the place where the human spirit awakened. It forced experts to ask an unsettling question. Have we misunderstood the entire sequence of human evolution? Whenever history is rewritten, controversy follows, and Göbekli Tepe is no exception. Some fringe theorists claimed it was evidence of lost civilizations, perhaps even connected to Atlantis or an advanced culture that vanished after the Ice Age. Others argued that the precision of the carvings and alignments hinted at knowledge passed down from unknown teachers, a proto-scientific society predating Sumer and Egypt. Mainstream archaeologists reject these ideas, pointing instead to human ingenuity. They argue that Göbekli Tepe shows how creative and capable humans already were long before recorded history. Still, questions linger. How did hunter-gatherers organize such large construction projects without permanent leadership? How did they feed hundreds of workers for months? How did they lift 20-ton stones without wheels or draft animals? Even today, no definitive answers exist. For Klaus Schmidt, Göbekli Tepe became a lifelong obsession. He spent 2 decades meticulously studying every carving, every stone alignment, every clue that could illuminate their builders' minds. He believed the site was not a city, not a burial ground, but a mountain sanctuary, a spiritual center for nomadic peoples from across the region. When asked what made Göbekli Tepe so significant, Schmidt answered simply, "It shows us that belief came before farming, before cities, before writing. It was the spark that made us human." He devoted the rest of his life to protecting it, fighting to keep the site from overexposure and misinterpretation. Tragically, he died in 2014 while still excavating, never seeing the full global recognition Göbekli Tepe would later receive. In 2018, the site was officially added to the UNESCO World Heritage List, securing its place among humanity's most sacred archaeological treasures. One of the most fascinating aspects of Göbekli Tepe is how its design mirrors human consciousness. Each layer of the site seems to represent an evolution in symbolic thought. The earliest enclosures, about 11,000 years old, are massive and deeply symbolic, filled with wild animals and cosmic imagery. Later structures become smaller and less ornate, suggesting that as human life became more settled, the need for vast communal temples faded. It's as if Göbekli Tepe records the psychological evolution of humanity, from awestruck wanderers gazing at the stars to organized societies shaping their gods into structured religion. Over time, as agriculture spread and permanent villages appeared, faith moved inward. Temples grew smaller, rituals more personal. Göbekli Tepe's burial may mark that transition, the moment when humanity shifted from worshiping in the wilderness to worshiping within walls. What makes Göbekli Tepe so haunting is its silence. There are no written records, no names, no myths preserved from the people who built it. And yet the echoes of their creation ripple through history. Look at the massive stone circles of Stonehenge, built thousands of years later in Britain, or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the temples of Egypt, the pyramids of Central America, all built as bridges between humans and the divine. In many ways, every temple, church, mosque, and shrine on earth can trace its spiritual ancestry back to Göbekli Tepe, the first place where humans gathered not to survive, but to believe.
As archaeologist Trevor Watkins put it, this was the beginning of something wholly new, the beginning of being human as we know it. Despite decades of excavation, Göbekli Tepe still guards its secrets. Who were the central T-pillars meant to represent? Are they gods, ancestors, or the builders themselves immortalized in stone? Why was the site buried? Was it a ritual closure, or did they fear something that made them abandon it? What do the animal carvings mean? Are they mythic symbols, star constellations, or totems of long-lost clans? Some researchers believe the carvings reflect an early cosmological map, a symbolic code expressing ideas about death, rebirth, and the cycle of nature. Others see it as a stage for ritual drama, a place where stories were enacted through music, dance, and sacrifice, thousands of years before written mythologies existed. The more we learn, the deeper the mystery grows. Today, Göbekli Tepe stands as a reminder that history is not a straight line, it's a spiral. Every new discovery sends us back to the beginning, forcing us to reimagine who we are. What began as a few weathered stones on a farmer's hill has become one of the most profound symbols of human creativity. It reminds us that our ancestors were not just survivors, they were dreamers. They looked at the stars, carved their fears and hopes into stone, and in doing so, built the first great monument to meaning. Modern visitors to Göbekli Tepe describe an overwhelming feeling, an unshakable sense that the stones are alive, humming softly with the memory of a forgotten faith. When sunlight hits the carvings at dawn, the pillars seem to glow, and for a moment, you can almost see them as they once were, towering above the plains, surrounded by the sound of drums, chants, and wind. It's as if time itself pauses to remember. Perhaps that's the true power of Göbekli Tepe. It doesn't just tell us about the past, it holds up a mirror to the present. We live in a world of technology, cities, and constant noise, but the questions those ancient builders asked are the same ones we ask today. Why are we here? What lies beyond? What connects us to the universe? Göbekli Tepe whispers an answer through the ages. The search for meaning is what makes us human. That simple truth unites the hunters of 10,000 BCE with the thinkers of today. Faith, imagination, cooperation, these are the real foundations of civilization. When the last light of sunset touches the hills of Urfa, Göbekli Tepe glows golden against the horizon. Its pillars, older than history itself, stand in quiet testimony to the birth of the human spirit. Perhaps someday, when the rest of the site is excavated, we'll find inscriptions, relics, or clues that reveal the names of the builders. Maybe not. But even in silence, Göbekli Tepe speaks louder than any history book. It tells us that the story of civilization began not with kings or conquests, but with belief, with a handful of people who looked at the night sky and decided that life must mean something more. From that moment onward, humanity was never the same. And it all began on a lonely hill in Turkey, where stone met faith, and faith became the seed of civilization.